On today's show, we put together another trade package to complete the Maple Leafs top six, and we dissect the newly inked collective bargaining agreement. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leafs centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. What's happening, Dave? How are you feeling on a Wednesday?
Feeling pretty nice.
Another dub for the Jays. I don't think they're going to lose another game the rest of the year. I think they're going to have a perfect back half of the season coming off of the All-Star break, don't you?
It's pretty. Yeah, it's not. And sometimes people wonder if the break's coming at the wrong time.
Did you? Question about this though, just to try and tie it back to the Maple Leafs, actually. Like where with the Jays, where are you at right now? Like, do you see this team as legitimate contenders the way that they're playing at this moment?
I say they're among the contenders. I don't know if I'm ready to put them, as surefire contenders, but I think they're getting there.
Do you remember a moment this season where you felt as strongly about the Maple Leafs' chances to win as you might right now feel about the Blue Jays? Like, did the Leafs ever give Leafs Nation this much hope that the Jays are currently giving to their fan base right now?
That's a good question. Because I kind of pushed last season out of the brain in a lot of
I know. I'm putting you on the spot, but I'm just thinking, like, was there a time, not even like a specific time, but like, was there a period where you thought, damn, maybe this team can win a Stanley Cup?
Yeah, it was probably. I'm trying to think of like a good stretch where they had.
What was their biggest win streak? They had a number like 4-game win streaks, like a good amount of 4-game win streaks, but I don't know if they ever actually 1, 2, 3, 4. They had 1 5-game winning streak where they kept. Yeah, this was like coming out of the Four Nations face-off, where they beat Carolina, Chicago, Boston, New York, and Pittsburgh. They went 5-0 coming out of the Four Nations, and that was, I believe that was the longest streak that the team went on until the final 5 games of the season. So they had 2 5-game win streaks. The last 5 games, they went 5-0 down the stretch. They beat Tampa, Montreal, Carolina, Buffalo, and Detroit. But that was the most games that they had won for them this year. So they never got to 10, where the Jays are at now, but they had a pair of 5-game winning streaks. If you actually go right before that, now that I'm looking at the schedule, there was that West Coast trip right before the Four Nations face-off where they were without some key players, and they went into Edmonton, gutsy victory, beat Edmonton 4-3. They beat Calgary 6-3 and the Kraken 3-1. And I remember thinking, like, wow, you go on the West Coast trip and you win those first 3 games, and they lost to Vancouver 2-1. But heading into that Four Nations face-off break, those were 3 big victories, I thought, where the team looked like they could be serious contenders, especially when they beat Edmonton in that game. That might be one of the better stretches that we saw the Maple Leafs play this year.
There was also that stretch in like November where they like shut out the Bruins. They beat the Red Wings, Canadians. They lost to the Sens, but they beat the Capitals, Oilers, Golden Knights.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
3 very good teams.
Right? Especially because that was roughly around the time that was in Vancouver for the Grey Cup, and they beat the Caps in overtime. Then they beat the Oilers. Then they beat Vegas, and it's like, okay, maybe there's something here with this team. They
Mm-hmm.
went on to then lose 5-1 to the Panthers, which didn't make people feel too good at that time. But then they won a couple more. Like there was kind of they were a very kind of streaky team. They trying to find their scoring. Then goaltending was it got a little shaky, but then they found their footing. So like they
Oh,
didn't go on like
there was another 5-game winning streak, by the way. I forgot. December 31st through to the new year until January 7th. They did win 5 in a row. Where they beat the Islanders in back-to-back games, then Boston, Philly, and Philly in back-to-back games. But that was like easy sked.
but kind of their end stretch of the season. I think like they really at that point they kind of locked things down and said, look, like we're going into the playoffs feeling pretty good about our game. And it did translate for the first 3 games of the playoffs.
Yeah.
Right? It's like there was like I felt like that at that point the Leafs had kind of said, okay, like this team is moving towards something. Like the Jays have shown that there's good things happening right now, but I always say that I want to see how this team stacks up against those who are among the elites, right? I'm talking about in some ways the Astros, the Tigers. They got pumped by Philly earlier in the year. That's another
that sweep
team.
against the Yankees was pretty impressive, though. Like
It was important
impressive
because it showed that they're the team and they're the team right now, obviously to beat in the AL East. But like, yeah, like that to me was it makes the team feel really good about themselves and it's propelled their momentum forward. And they're taking advantage right now of a good schedule heading into this All-Star break.
Yeah, if they can close it out and finish it out. They're I think 1 win shy of tying the franchise record, 2 wins shy of breaking the franchise record for wins in a row. So they're at 10 and franchise record at 11, which they've done 5 times. We'll see if they can get it done and get to 12. But yeah, I just thought of, it's just interesting. Like the city of Toronto is buzzing right now when it comes to the Blue Jays. And just curious to get your thoughts on, what did the Leafs give you that type of optimism at some point this year? And yeah, I think they did at times. I think is basically what we can conclude. I mean, when they beat Ottawa and they were up 2-0 on Florida, you probably also had a feeling like, hey, this feels different. This could be it. I think that's another kind of timeline for the Maple Leafs where you thought things could be going the right direction toward maybe a championship, but quickly went away. They're up 2-0 on Florida, and then they lost 4 of the last 5 and got absolutely jobbed in games 5 and 7. And now it's a different team, right? They lost Mitch Marner, which was a massive piece, and they need to figure out a way to replace that player. And yesterday on the podcast, Dave, I gave what I thought was a really solid trade offer for a player that could be slotted into the top 6, take Marner's position, and the guy I decided to trade for was Brian Rust. And I was willing to give up Easton Cowan and Max Domi to get it done. And that was kind of my trade proposal. Today, on the other side, Dave, you give us your trade proposal for another potential Leafs target to round out the top 6. So get to that more next here in the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
Ever wish managing money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. And if you're somebody who doesn't like to have all these different apps to look at things and wants all the convenience, Monarch Money is just for you. And you can also take a look at specific categories to see where your money is going and how everything adds up. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKDOWNNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKDOWNNHL for half off your first year.
The Locked On Leafs podcast continues. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with you as we are each and every weekday, Monday through Friday, free and available wherever you get your podcasts, and also up on YouTube. All the rest of the Leaf daily shows seem to go away in the summer. Not us, Dave. Not us. We'll still stick around all summer and give you that daily dose of Maple Leafs content. And talk a little about what's going around in the NHL too. We'll get to kind of what the big news of the day was in the league a little later on. The CBA has been agreed to and officially ratified by the NHL in the NHLPA. So we'll tell you what that means, the details, and the big changes to come to the league from that. But before we get there, again, yesterday on the podcast, I had my potential trade target, and I came up with a trade package that I thought made sense to land Brian Rust, who was the player that I had interest in. And then I gave you a little homework, Dave. I said, tomorrow, it's your turn to play GM. It's your turn to make a phone call and see if you can get a trade done. So I'll give you the floor here, Dave. Who do you think the Maple Leafs should go after, and what's it going to cost?
Yeah, so I try to look at teams that maybe are looking to move on from players, and I looked back at just some options at 32 Thoughts the podcast. Elliot Friedman, maybe we're talking about guys that might be on the move. And one player that stuck out to me was from the Utah Mammoth now. I know they just made a trade with Utah, but maybe something happens where they can circle back a little bit here. Nick Schmaltz.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Why would you like Nick Schmaltz on the team?
So Nick Schmaltz, he's in a kind of interesting position right now where he's on the final year of his deal. We know that, the Mammoth are trying to add a little bit of size to their team, but also I like Schmaltz as like a very versatile player. He can play wing, he can play center. He's 29 years old. He's coming off actually a pretty productive year, and he was healthy for a change. That's always been kind of a knock on him, is he hadn't really been able to stay healthy, but 63 points, 20 goals. Played decent amount with the team. Now he's he's not totally undersized. He's 6 feet, right? But it just stands to see that, there could be an opportunity for the Leafs to see if, get ahead of the game a little bit. Because I think he'd be a good, if Utah is not able to sign him come the end of the next year, that could be a guy I could see the Leafs trying to target. He's got some good playmaking ability. I think he would work well as a right shot. Also, I wanted to get a guy who's a right shot, kind of how you did with Rust. And he just kind of seemed like the perfect fit.
Is he someone you're hoping could be a number 2 center, or are you hoping to push him to the wing?
I would try him on the wing first, but he's a guy that could easily play second line center if you feel like you need to make that move, right? If you feel like Tavares is just not cutting it down the middle, Schmaltz could easily play that role. And that's why I like the versatile options he provides you. You could push Schmaltz at center on the second line. You can even move Nylander up to wing on the first line. Right? Because then you can move JT to the wing, and you can have Tavares on second line, left winger, and have somebody else on the right side, or you can have Michelli on that. You got a little bit of options there, I think, if you make a move like that.
So what do you think the acquisition cost of Nick Schmaltz would be? What's the package? What are you offering the Utah Mammoth?
Yeah, so this is where I kind of just said that they're looking to add size. I don't think Easton Cowan is a guy that they would want because he doesn't fit that blueprint that they're looking for in terms of a forward to add size. So in terms of a roster player that kind of helps, fit in that size need, I threw in Bobby McMahon as kind of the roster player to get things started. Now, Schmaltz is a very productive player, so Bobby McMahon alone is not going to cut it. That's why, and some people might not like to hear this, but I looked at the prospect blue line and see would Utah may ask for Ben Danford. Now they don't need Ben. Ben Danford's not a guy that's going to help them now. But if you look at Utah's blue line, it's something I think that's an area of need for them. At some point down the road, they only got some half decent pieces, but it feels like they don't really have a lot of futures there. That really makes sense. So I think if you're the Leafs, you say, look, Bob McMahon will come in and he can take Schmaltz's place in the lineup in the top 6. So I think they can use that size there. Ben Danford could be kind of that piece down the road that you can look forward to having on your blue line, right? That they just don't have.
I don't hate the player. I'm not sure that that's the type of return that Arizona would be looking for. Though,
Utah.
Arizona. Wow, that's another
dollar in the jar, Mike. Another
dollar in the jar. It's back-to-back days. But like the Mammoth are looking to take a step forward, right? I don't know if Ben Danford and Bobby McMahon puts them ahead, right?
Fair.
Where's the it's an interesting concept. It's a player that I hadn't heard of, so I do like the creativity and thinking outside the box on a player that obviously is not getting a lot of fanfare. And it could make sense in the fact that does Utah, instead of trying to extend him or trying to chance losing him to free agency, do they try and get ahead of things and try and get something for him, right? So in Bobby McMahon, who's a controllable asset, he's coming off a 20-goal season. I suppose that does make some sense, but I don't know if you look at Bobby McMahon, if you're Utah, who's expecting to try and make a playoff push this year and think he could replace Schmaltz. Like Schmaltz had 63 points this year, 61 last year. Like on an 82-game basis, he's averaging 68 points over the last 4 years with Utah/Arizona. So I don't necessarily see Bobby McMahon being that guy. Like he had a career high 24 points this past season, which is fine for third, fourth line winger. I'm not sure McMahon is ready to take on that big of a role. But I think it's a worthwhile phone call to see what they would be interested in. Like if it's not McMahon, what would it have to be? I imagine you would stay away from the Easton Cowan. Like if they said we want Cowan, like that's where it has to start. Is that a hang up for you or are you entertaining it?
Only way I'm entertaining is if I get Schmaltz signed to a deal.
Okay. So it's like a sign and trade. You get Cowan and we get Schmaltz on an extension.
Yeah. That I would do it for that. Because then
interesting.
Because Schmaltz is not, unlike Rust, who's 33, Schmaltz is 29.
Right. So he'll have a few more years left of prime hockey and gives you a bit more versatility with a guy who can play down the middle and also kick out to the wing. And he's the playmaker that this top 6 is kind of missing, right? Like they've got guys who can put the puck at the back of the net in Matthews and in Nylander and in Nyes and in Tavares. They need a playmaker and a guy who can set things up. So Nick Schmaltz definitely, he fits the bill for what the Maple Leafs top 6 could use. I think just it would be interesting to see what they would ask for. I don't know if McMahon and Danford get that.
I just kind of threw McMahon as like that big body that they may want to add, but
yeah,
I certainly think it's going to cost more than that.
Yeah, probably a little bit more. And it's interesting. I saw in the comments yesterday, shocker, Dave and I do look at the comments, and there were some Easton Cowan fans that are like, you can't trade Easton Cowan. Like you cannot give up a top prospect. Like, he's going to be a beast for this team moving forward. I I saw a list of the Maple Leafs top 10 prospects from a decade ago. We're going to come back from break and I'm going to unveil this list, Dave. And it's just going to point out that prospects don't always pan out to be what they're supposed to be. That's essentially what I learned when I read through this top 10 list. So I'll unveil that, and we'll get to the CBA chat in a little bit as well. Lots of change coming to the NHL and the way that business is done, but we do have labor peace through till the end of 2030. So we'll explain the changes next on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. The Locked On Leafs podcast continues. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with you as we are each and every weekday, Monday through Friday, free and available wherever you get your podcast at, and also up on YouTube. So it's actually just like perusing, I think it was Instagram or something, and it said, boy, how much a difference of 10 years can make. And it was a comparison of the Montreal Canadiens prospect pool from 2015 compared to the current prospect pool in 2025. Night and day difference. Let me tell you, Dave. Night and day difference. The Montreal Canadiens are in a much better spot now than they were a decade ago when it comes to the prospect outlook. A lot of those guys, starting to really, turn into players at that. The Maple Leafs, bit of a different situation. 10 years ago, they had a couple of solid prospects and more that we thought were going to turn into better players. Not so much anymore. Like, we know Easton Cowan is kind of the belle of the ball when it comes to their prospects. Ben Danford is a guy we like, but there's kind of a decent drop off after that. Not a very strong prospect pool that the Maple Leafs have. 10 years ago, though, the names that are on this list, I recall there being a lot of luster at the time, and boy, it did not take long for that luster for that shine to fall off, essentially. I'm curious, actually, before I go through the top 10 prospects, this was going into the 2015-16 season. So this would have been after the Marner draft, I think. Yep. is when this list was out. So this is pre-Austin Matthews. Who do you think is on this list? When we think back 10 years ago, who would have been the top 10 prospects for the Maple Leafs? Don't Google it. Just throw out some names that you think might be on this list.
15. Well, yeah, Marner.
Correct. He comes in at number 1.
Travis Dermott.
He comes in at number 9.
Number 9. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Nylander.
Nylander is number 2. So your 1 and 2 prospect turned out to be stars in the NHL.
Yeah,
that's the good thing. But that's where it stops.
Yeah,
from 3 through 10, it is bleak. Very bleak. Couple of guys who've turned out okay careers, but they're certainly not studs. Couple more names that come to mind, maybe.
Jeremy Bracco's a name that always comes to mind for me.
Number 4 on this list.
Was Andrew Nielsen on that list?
Andrew Nielsen is not on this list. No.
Interesting.
He was maybe a little earlier.
I know the Leafs had drafted Dakota Joshua. Would he be on that list?
He is not. No Dakota Joshua. You want me to tell you the list?
Yeah, give me the rest of that list.
So you got Marner and Nylander coming in at number 2. Kasperi Kapanen comes in at number 3.
The Kessel trade.
The Kessel trade, and that gave them their 3rd best prospect, and it was Kasperi Kapanen. He's gone on to have an okay career, nothing special, but that was the 3rd best prospect at the time. Jeremy Bracco at 4. Connor Brown, who's had a respectable career, comes in at number 5, and then after that you got Andreas Janssen, cup of coffee with the Leafs. This is okay. Scott Harrington comes in at number 7.
Oh, God, the other part of the Phil Kessel trade.
Yep, the other part of the Phil Kessel trade.
Ugh.
Brendan Leipzig comes in at number 8. Yep.
Oh, my goodness.
Travis Dermott, number 9.
Mm-hmm.
And then Nikita Soshnikov comes in at number 10. So, like, Marner and Nylander obviously turned out to be top-tier prospects, but those guys were top 10 picks. Like, they couldn't miss prospects, right, when they were drafted. That just, like, goes to show, and there's still people who are upset that Fraser Minton got traded. Like, Minton was a second-round pick. Minton might top out as a third-line center in the NHL. Like, there's nothing that makes it feel like this guy's going to turn into a number 1 center. How could you possibly trade him away? And, like, even Easton Cowan, like, you know, I've spoken to a lot of scouts, and they're like, Easton Cowan in a perfect world, if he projects to the NHL and things go right, he could be a middle 6 player. He doesn't project to be a top line scorer at the NHL level. So if you could give up an Easton Cowan who in the next 2 to 3 years might turn into a good top 6 player or middle 6 player at that, maybe a 40, 50 point guy, 60 points if he's lucky, I don't mind turning that into a win now piece that can get you 60, 70, 80 points over the next couple of years, like a Brian Rust, like a Nick Schmaltz even, or a Ricard Raquel. I would not be afraid of trading away prospects when the Leafs have such a short window to win. Like, their window is 3 more years till the Matthews contract's over. That's the window that this team has. If it takes Easton Cowan a couple of years to get to where he needs to get to, you're kind of wasting that. You can speed up the clock by trading him for a win now piece to a team that is rebuilding, or wants to give a player a change of scenery, or wants to get out of a contract, or it's someone entering a contract year and they don't want to sign there, so you get something for it. There's multiple reasons why teams would be willing to give up quality players for prospects. Feel like the Maple Leafs should not be scared, and Leafs Nation shouldn't be scared to give up an Easton Cowan. It's no surefire bet that he turns into a stud. And if you look at the list from 10 years ago, and there's so many other prospects out there that had lots of shine to them, and they just did not come to fruition. I'm not saying Cowan will be a bust. Very well could be a good player. But is he untradeable? In my eyes, no. And again, you look at that list, there's a lot of players on that list at one point seem like great prospects, right? Can't trade away Jeremy Bracco. It's going to be a great top 6 winger for the Leafs, goal scorer. Whoa, Kasperi Kapanen, that guy's going to be a great middle 6 player for the Leafs for years to come. Well, those things didn't happen. Scott Harrington didn't turn into a top 4 defenseman. Like, a lot of players don't turn out to be the player that they project to be. So this is just me basically proving and saying, like, don't be afraid if the Maple Leafs do decide to make a deal and trade out Easton Cowan. The position that the team is in right now, I think it makes sense to speed up the clock and get more of a veteran nightly contributor in the top 6 than it does waiting for Easton Cowan to get there in a year or two.
Yeah, see, the thing, and we talked about this, is the Leafs had always been trading their draft picks when they should have been trading some of their prospects that in some ways have looked good at times, but then you hold on to them, and eventually it's like, yeah, kind of like with most prospects, the development curve just wasn't there for them. I'm not saying that's going to happen to Easton Cowan. It's just more so, if you have a chance to get a for sure thing right now, and not just a one and done for sure thing, trade him. Like, as much as I would love to see Easton Cowan on the Leafs and show what he can do, I'm also in the belief that this team can't be in a wait and see with an Easton Cowan either. Like, if you're relying on Easton Cowan to maybe provide some of what we lost with Marner, that's asking for a lot, right? Like, how many years ago was Nick Robertson when he was tearing up the OHL? Many people probably would have said, no, don't trade Nick Robertson.
100%. Lots
Guess
of
what?
people were like, can't trade that guy. Absolutely not. Well,
Guess
now
what?
you might get nothing for him.
Exactly. Like, the guy, struggled to stay in the lineup as a third line player. It's hard sometimes, and I get it. He had the pandemic hurt his development, and injuries haven't always been kind to him. But those are things those are risks you take when you hold on to prospects rather than trying to bet on more sure things. So
even worse. Okay, 5 years ago. Just go back to 5 years ago, Dave. Josh Cloak wrote an athletic article with his top Maple Leafs prospects going into the 2020 season. Okay, number one, he had Rasmus Sandin, not with the team anymore. They trade him away, got a first round pick out of the deal. Worked out very well. I believe that turned out to be Easton Cowan, if I'm not mistaken, the pick that they used. Nick Robertson comes in at number 2. He was the second best prospect of the team. And obviously, you just mentioned it. He had a massive season, draft +1 season. Everyone thought he was going to be a star in this league. Has not turned out to be. Third best prospect, Mikko Kokkonen. I mean, I'm pretty sure the guy was just let go, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think they tendered his rights.
I don't think he tendered his rights.
Yeah, so like Mikko Kokkonen, not even with the team anymore. Okay, rest in peace, Rodion Amirov. That one, we don't need to talk about that unfortunate situation. At number 5, Timothy Liljegren, right? They ended up trading him for like a third round pick eventually, but like they wasted a first round pick.
And he's another guy that could be moved out for nothing.
And could have probably, if they would have put him in deals earlier, could have got something far better. Mikhail Abrabov, Topi Niemelä, Philip Hollander, Mac Hollowell, Roni Hirvonen, Nick Abruzzese, Simeon Der Argentintsev, Christians Rubens, like Ian Scott. Like, these are the names that are showing up on this list.
Justin Brazeau.
Justin Brazeau was an ECHL, right? William Villanove is another player that was there, right? Like Pontus Holmberg comes in at number 20. That's cool. Pontus, all right, cool. I'll take it. Turned out to be a decent player. But yeah, it's trading prospects is not always as daunting as some people make it seem.
Mm-hmm.
Is all I gotta say. All right, really quickly, Dave. Let's actually, do we want to get into the CBA tomorrow?
Yeah, we got time.
Yeah, we got time tomorrow. Let's kind of put a pin on the CBA conversation tomorrow, but just need to know that labor peace has been reached through till the end of 2030, and there are a number of changes that are included in the CBA. So we'll go over those changes and what it could mean for the league and for the Maple Leafs specifically on tomorrow's show. So that'll do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti and follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. We'll be back with another episode for you guys tomorrow. Until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.